In 2003, a decade after the historic release of Terminator 2 Judgment Day, they released the new one, Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines. And it missed the mark.
You're gonna see some serious shit.
So say we all. Engage.
Hey all, I'm writer-producer Trader Bubba here to break down how Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines tried so hard and failed so large. I'm going to be breaking down this movie from the perspective of a professional screenwriter. We're going to be focusing on tone, plot, and overall writing. And let's start off with tone, because right away in the beginning of this movie, it's all over the place. It starts off with a horribly written voiceover from John Connor as he's driving down a lonely, dark road. So visually, it's appealing. It's dark. It's trying to bring a little bit of that heaviness from the second film. However, when the Terminator arrives, it immediately gets goofy and silly and embarrassing.
You close.
Talk to the hand.
Now.
Terminator 2 Judgment Day worked so well for numerous reasons, but namely because the characters worked. If you go back and watch Terminator 2 Judgment Day, especially the director's cut, which I highly recommend, you'll see that, first of all, it's a longer film. It's like 2.5+ hours. As much action as there is in that film, it's a little bit of a slow burn. You really are given time to connect with the main characters of John Connor, Sarah Connor, and the Terminator. Terminator 2 Judgment Day is a story about a boy and his dog. No, really, that's what we call it in writing. It's John Connor and his puppy, which is the Terminator, with a little bit of hint of I wish you were my dad at the end. And that's what makes it work. He's teaching the Terminator how to be human. And the Terminator at the very end of the second film says that classic line, "I know now why you cry, but it is something I could never do." And there's a lot of subtext in Terminator 2 Judgment Day, especially for being really technically an action film. It's asking the question, can the Terminator have a soul? What does it mean to really be human? What does it mean to be more than what we are? And can the Terminator, a cybernetic organism, achieve that? It's interesting. It stops and it makes you think. And then it shows some really awesome action stuff at you. The problem with Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines is it tries to capitalize on some of the darker, heavier aspects of Terminator 2, and then it completely throws it out the window. And then we meet our main characters, John Connor and his wife. Well, not his wife, his future wife, Claire Danes. I've already forgotten the character's name. Brewster. It's something Brewster. We're going to get into character names in a minute here. And the tone is flat for the most part of this film. You're never really given a chance to connect with either John or the woman, and it just feels flat, forced. There's no chemistry between them. They're supposed to be married, have kids, and John's supposed to be the leader of the resistance. It just isn't there. John's supposed to be the leader of the resistance, this great last hope for mankind. In Terminator 2 Judgment Day, Edward Furlong played, I think he's supposed to be like, 12, 13? God, I'm trying to... That movie came out in like 92, but I think it actually takes place in like... It doesn't take place the year it came out, by the way. It can't. Because John Connor was born in like 85. And he's like 13 years old in this movie. Think about it. And the movie came out 7 years later. And he's not... The Terminator 1 and Terminator 2 are only like 7 years apart. And John Connor is like 13 in the movie. So... but Edward Furlong played a young John Connor, and he plays him as very much a kid, but a badass. In Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines, John Connor is a whiny runt. I don't know how else to put it. Like, I'm not saying a hero has to be a man and bulked up. I'm not saying that at all, but the way Nick Stahl plays John Connor in this movie is, I wouldn't follow him to the grocery store, let alone leading the resistance and the last best hope for mankind. Even at the very end of the movie, spoiler alert, when the world ends and you see him say his first words as John Connor, leader of the resistance, this is how he does it. He hits the mic and he says, I'm in charge. My name's John Connor. So tone, all over the place. Plot, they just rehashed Terminator 2. There's a Terminator sent back to kill not just John, but a bunch of his, I guess, generals and his future wife, but he's still considered a target. So when John accidentally gets mixed into the picture, he becomes the primary target of a now female Terminator, the Terminatrix, played by Kristanna Loken. I almost got to meet her. I had to cut her paychecks. Didn't quite get a chance to meet her. And that whole thing was, again, tone, silly. I don't have a problem with female heroes. I don't have a problem with female leads. Sarah Connor is kind of up there with Princess Leia in my book. She's a kick-ass female lead. And, you know, can a woman be a Terminator? Yeah, I guess. But I guess my point is, why? You know, is it a specifically designed Terminator to look like a woman because of a specific scenario situation that they think she would infiltrate better? You know, they did that in the Sarah Connor Chronicles, the Terminator TV show. There's a girl Terminator in that one, and that's sort of explained. This one just isn't. They just like, no, we want somebody hot. We need a model. And she's going to show up naked, and then there's going to be a boob joke. Tone is all over the place in this movie. And instead of just running and hiding, John Connor decides we have to stop Judgment Day. Does that sound familiar? It's the plot of Terminator 2. Only this time, instead of being with John and his mother, you're with John and his future wife, who have no chemistry or seem even interested in hooking up, boning, doing anything. They barely like each other. Boning. Let's talk about the writing of Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. I try not to get too hard on studio film screenwriters because they get a lot of notes. And I'd be curious to see an early draft of this movie. There was a completely different movie that almost got made for Terminator 3 before James Cameron backed out quite some years prior. And this movie suffers from a lot of the problems that we're really seeing now, and that is, hey, computer effects are getting cheaper. Let's really beef up the action, which is fine if you're making a full-on action movie. The problem is this is a sequel, a direct sequel to Terminator 2, so much so that they're paying homage way too much or just trying to completely rehash Terminator 2. And what the writers of the studio seem to lack understanding of is why the audience connected to Terminator 2. The movie is really about a lost boy finding this puppy / father figure, which is interesting. We've never really seen that before. And then him sort of remaking his family. He saves his mom, who's crazy, which, by the way, the reason Sarah Connor's crazy in Terminator 2 is because Linda Hamilton wouldn't come back unless she got to play crazy. And he's sort of has his family, right? He's like, finally, I got a mom. I kind of have this dad. I got to teach him some shit. But I kind of have this family. And for a minute there, they're on a road trip. And it's almost like a road trip movie. The problem with Terminator 3 is they're like, yeah, we really want to keep this under 2 hours. Special effects have gotten cheaper. We've got these crazy set piece, which is a fancy way of saying action scenes. We have these crazy set piece ideas. We want to do this thing with the truck and this crane and then a bathroom fight. And, you know, like there's a lot of action scenes to get to cram into an under 2 hour movie. So the characters suffer. That's why this movie doesn't work. So when I talk about the writing, I've seen movies that are far worse written. I'm going to throw that out there right now. I think the writer was probably I think he probably pitched a similar idea, and the studio said, great, here's what we want to see in the movie. And the writer's like, all right, well, all my character ideas are going to have to go out the window then. And you kind of get this sort of flat action film. It's not a bad watch. I just watched it. I enjoyed it. I remember seeing it in the theater and going, kind of lacks the punch of the second one, but stuff blew up. Arnold was Terminator. I didn't hate the movie. It just fell flat. You know, the Terminator sort of tricks them into getting into this bunker so they can survive Judgment Day. And it's not a bad twist. Here's the problem with that. World ends. Judgment Day is inevitable. And it's kind of I don't know. It's just, it's depressing, obviously, but it's kind of a letdown because the Terminator 1 and 2 always ended with a little bit of hope. And that was, I remember sitting in the theater and going, visually beautiful, cinematic. The music was great. Again, as the missiles fly, I remember that going, oh, that's really pretty. Doesn't belong in this movie. If it was any other movie, I probably would have been like, oh, okay, not a bad ending. For Terminator, the whole point is there's no fate but what we make for ourselves. And to just not have that hope at the end, I didn't like it. I just don't think it worked. Overall writing, I'm gonna give the writing a B- because it's not that it's a poorly written film. I think it was a poorly designed film, and it's hard to judge on a big studio film like this how much of that was the screenwriter versus the producers versus the studio or distributor that wanted certain things in there with their notes. The writing in this movie, you know, they tried to do some interesting stuff with the characters. It's just flat, and you're not given the time, the emotional engagement to connect with the characters to really make it work. So Terminator 3, which completely got retconned out of existence through Terminator Dark Fate anyway, you know, which is going to be a whole nother video. Doesn't even exist anyway. If you're looking for just a fun popcorn kind of flick that you don't really have to pay that much attention to, it's not a bad film. If there had never been a Terminator 1 or 2 and this was the first Terminator movie that we saw, it'd be kind of like a standard Schwarzenegger action flick, you know? Not great, not bad, entertaining. The problem is they tried to rehash Terminator 2, which is a well-written, layered, classic James Cameron film. And it's, instead of trying to do something original, they really just tried to recapture that lightning in the bottle from James Cameron. They tried to rehash the plot. They tried to touch on the tone of the second film, and just absolutely none of it worked. None of it worked. Guys, I'm Trader Bubba. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe. It really helps this brand new channel grow. Bubba Breaks Sci-Fi. We're going to do amazing things here. Stay tuned for my next Terminator video on Terminator Dark Fate. I have notes.
You're gonna see some serious shit.
So say we all. Engage.